Sarah Butler, and you're watching Hollywood and Vines. Today, I wanted to talk to you from my brand new beanbag chair about my favorite things to grow. And I live in Southern California, so these are very specific to this area. The best crops to grow are always going to change depending on where you live. So if you live in this area, this could be very helpful. If not, it might not be so helpful. My fruiting fig tree, number one. I love it so much. I planted it 3 years ago. You may have seen it in my introduction to pruning video recently. It's really flourishing in my front yard. I don't have to do much to it. And every year it produces delicious, delicious figs. It has also been really, really fun to experiment with pruning techniques, and it's always very responsive. So that one is amazing, and plus figs are delicious. If you've never had a fresh fig, it's nothing like the Fig Newtons. It's incredible, especially with cheese. Tomatoes are number two. Any kind of tomatoes. There's actually a saying that the Southern California gardeners' reason for doing what they do is tomatoes, and I think it has something to do with the fact that the longer that the tomato fruit is in the hot, hot sun, the sweeter it becomes. So we obviously have a lot of sunshine here, and we grow very, very flavorful tomatoes. I have 6 or 7 varieties growing this year. Grapevines are number 3. I have grapevines growing in my backyard. They're probably about 8 years old minimum. They were here long before I was, but they weren't producing any grapes until I gave them a structure to grow on. I put them up on this wire, and they now have just spread out. I mean, they are expansive. They have so many leaves. They are deciduous, meaning they lose their leaves in the winter time. But that means every springtime it's so exciting to watch them grow, and they do so fast. And they already have these tiny, tiny little grape bunches on there that are gonna fill out and be delicious. They're like a California table grape, which is just like a small, purple, very sweet grape that goes well with cheese. I feel like I'm getting deja vu. Herbs as landscape plants is number 4. Herbs, everyone knows, are wonderful for cooking or putting in cocktails. But I don't think a lot of people know that they can also make beautiful landscape plants. I especially like to plant them right alongside a pathway for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're easy to access when you need to snip a little rosemary to add to your lamb chops, or a little mint for your mint julep, or whatever it is that you're making in the kitchen. The other reason is that even if you're not going to cut it and you're just walking past on the path, just brushing up against an herb really produces a beautiful scent. Definitely highly recommend that, and there are so many different ones. I personally have rosemary, mint, melissa, which is also known as lemon balm. What other ones do I have? I have thyme, I have sage, so many. Citrus trees. Especially my lemon tree, number 5. Citrus trees are one of the most prominent crops in Southern California. In fact, before Los Angeles was the center of the entertainment industry, it was pretty much all orange groves. And that was only less than 100 years ago, I think. Orange trees, lemon trees, all citrus trees do really, really well in our climate here. You've probably seen some in someone's yard if you've been around. I have a lemon tree that I love. And what's extra good about lemon trees is that they produce year-round, where a lot of citrus trees have a season where the fruit ripens. A lot of times it's in the winter. That's why we get oranges in our Christmas stockings. But the lemons, well, they're fine. They just keep on going. And you know how useful they are for food and drink. And also, I think disinfecting, someone told me recently. So you never know, lots of uses. Dragon tongue beans. Dragon tongue beans are a variety of green bean. I believe they're a bush bean. But what makes them special and different is this beautiful coloration that they have. It has basically purple kind of stripes, almost like a paintbrush stroke. They're also just prolific. I grew a bunch of them last year, and I would come out every day and take a dozen off of the bush, and a dozen more would be ready for me the next day. So that's always the definition of a great crop to me, is one that you can continually harvest from, and that is very abundant. Wild carrot, also known as Queen Anne's lace. It's a very common wildflower. Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot is a wildflower, and I had some planted in a wildflower mix that I put up around my citrus trees last year, and it reseeded itself, meaning that the seeds from the flowers just fell down into the beds, and this year I had to do nothing and they just grew. And they're so beautiful because they form this perfectly round kind of firework of white flowers. I also clipped a few and put them in water in my kitchen, and they have been there for a couple of weeks and they still look great. Ice Queen lettuce is a variety of head lettuce, meaning if it matures, it just forms like, you know, like a round head, kind of like iceberg, or even romaine is considered a head lettuce because it kind of stays compact. But what I liked about it, and the reason I chose it to try, was the fact that it seemed to have a lot of, what does my mom always say? You need your fiber. You need your you need your fiber, so you need to eat your greens. Thanks, Mom. But it also has these really frilly edges on the outside, so to me it was like, ooh, it has both textures. Intriguing. So we'll see if I was right about that. Number 9, beets. I love beets. Maybe that's a nerdy thing, I'm not sure. I kind of feel like they're more hip now than they were when we were kids. Kind of like, you know, you can go to fancy restaurants or like hipster restaurants and get them. But they're just fun because they grow under the soil, so you don't really see them developing until you stick your fingers in and you feel how big they are, and it's a big surprise. And I grow them in 3 different varieties. I grow golden beets, bull's blood beets, which is your traditional red, and also Chioggia beets, which is an Italian variety that is red and white striped, which is pretty cool. So I really enjoy them. They do really well here. And number 10 is sugar snap peas. Sugar snap peas. Who doesn't love them? They're so sweet and delicious, and they barely ever make it out of the garden. You just snap them off and pop them in your mouth. But I also really like them because they grow so quickly. Whenever I plant my seeds, they're one of the first things to pop right up, and they just grow so fast. I put some strings and I tie them to nails on the edge of the planter bed, and then up above I attach them to, you know, the eaves of the house, or, you know, something just up above for them to grow on. They love to grow on strings, and the taller they get, the more peas they'll produce. So it's really fun. A good one for beginners because it's kind of like instant gratification. And number 11! I know, it was only supposed to be 10, but I was walking around my garden and getting the B-roll footage, and I was like, oh my God, how could I forget my artichokes? Artichokes are probably number 1. They should be number 1, they deserve it. Honestly, they're the first thing that people mention when they get a garden tour. They're like, oh my God, you have artichokes? Yes, yes I do, and they're so good. Every year I harvest them and eat them all up with lemon garlic aioli. So striking, right off the bat you notice them, and also they're perennials, so that means they keep growing every year. You don't have to replant them like a tomato or other crops that only last that 1 year, so it's pretty low maintenance as well. So I think that's it, guys. That's my 10 favorite things to grow in Southern California this year, 2020. So if you live in this area, definitely give some of those a try. A lot of those will work in other areas too, but you just want to research first to make sure that they'll do well in your zone. But have fun experimenting and let me know if you had the same success. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Mwah!